When I told them I got the VP position, my wife's father asked, "Did your wife pull strings for you?" The bourbon in my hand stopped halfway to my lips. I was standing in the private event space at the Metropolitan Club, an exclusive venue in downtown Boston, surrounded by my wife's entire family, celebrating what should have been the crowning achievement of my 15-year career. The promotion to Vice President of Operations at Blackstone Technologies had been announced that morning at 11:30, making me the youngest VP in the company's 42-year history at 38 years old. My wife, Olivia, had insisted on organizing this dinner to share the news with her family, and I'd agreed despite my hesitation because she seemed genuinely proud of me. Now, her father, Lawrence Whitmore, was staring at me from across the table with this condescending smile that made my stomach turn, waiting for my response to his question, like he'd just made a witty observation, instead of publicly suggesting I was a parasite riding on his daughter's coattails. The silence in the room was suffocating. Olivia's mother, Claire, had gone very still with her wine glass frozen mid-air. Olivia's brother, Kyle, was smirking like this was the most entertaining thing he'd witnessed all month. And Olivia, my wife of 8 years, was studying the centerpiece arrangement, like those roses had suddenly become the most fascinating thing in the world. I'd been working at Blackstone Technologies for 15 years when the VP decision came through, starting as a junior systems analyst straight out of MIT, where I'd graduated with a degree in computer engineering and a minor in business administration. The company specialized in enterprise software solutions and cloud infrastructure, serving major corporations across North America and Europe. I'd built my reputation by leading critical system migrations, developing proprietary algorithms that increased processing efficiency by 38%, and managing teams through complex projects that other managers had declared impossible. My performance reviews had been exceptional every single year. I generated over $12 million in new revenue through client retention and business development over the past 5 years. The VP promotion had come after I successfully led a merger integration project that consolidated 2 competing systems into one unified platform, saving the company an estimated $23 million annually. CEO Thomas Reynolds had called me into his office that morning and told me the board's decision had been unanimous. He'd specifically mentioned my technical expertise, my leadership abilities, and my strategic vision for the company's future. Now, Lawrence Whitmore was suggesting none of that mattered, because surely a man married to his successful daughter couldn't achieve anything on his own merit. I set my bourbon glass down carefully on the white tablecloth, aware that everyone was watching me, measuring my reaction. My throat felt tight, my jaw clenched so hard I could feel the pressure in my temples. "I'm sorry. What did you just say?" My voice came out harder than I intended, which was probably good because my instinct was to just walk out immediately. Lawrence leaned back in his chair, that condescending smile widening into something that looked almost gleeful. "Come on, Nathan. We're all family here. A young man making VP at a company where his wife's family has significant connections. We know how these things work." He said it like he was explaining basic arithmetic to a child, like I should be grateful he was acknowledging the reality of my supposed inadequacy instead of letting me embarrass myself by actually believing I'd earned anything. Claire made this little humming sound, not quite agreement but definitely not disagreement either, and reached for her wine. Kyle was openly grinning now, clearly enjoying my discomfort. I looked at Olivia, waiting for her to say something, to defend me, to tell her father that his comment was completely inappropriate and factually wrong. Olivia cleared her throat softly. "Dad, that's not exactly fair." Her voice was barely audible, and she still wasn't looking at me. That was it. That was her defense of my 15-year career and documented accomplishments. Not exactly fair, like her father had made a slightly tactless remark instead of publicly emasculating her husband by suggesting I was incompetent and only successful because of family connections. Lawrence waved his hand dismissively, like he was swatting away an insignificant insect. "Oh, don't be naive, sweetheart. Blackstone has done business with Whitmore Industries for what, 20 years now? Your husband's rise through the ranks coincidentally accelerated right after you two got married." He looked directly at me with that patronizing expression. "No shame in it, my boy. Marrying well is a legitimate strategy. Smart men have been doing it for centuries." Kyle actually laughed out loud at that, this sharp bark of amusement that echoed in the private dining room. "Dad's got a point. Pretty convenient timing with all those promotions." Claire nodded like they were discussing something perfectly reasonable. "Lawrence is just being realistic, dear. Networking and family connections are part of business. Nathan should be grateful he married into a family with influence." She said it like she was complimenting me, like I should thank them for the charity of allowing me to benefit from their name. I felt something cold and sharp settle in my chest, a clarity that cut through the shock and humiliation. These people didn't respect me. They'd never respected me. Every family gathering for the past 8 years, every holiday dinner, every celebration, they'd treated my career accomplishments like cute little hobbies, while elevating Olivia's work as a corporate attorney like she was personally negotiating world peace. I'd convinced myself they were just protective of their daughter, that they'd warm up to me once they saw my success. I'd been completely wrong about that. I stood up from the table, my chair scraping loudly against the hardwood floor. "I'm leaving. Olivia finally looked at me, confusion and something that might have been embarrassment crossing her face. What? We haven't even ordered entrees yet. I stared at her. This woman I'd married, this woman who'd stood at an altar and promised to support me through everything, who was now asking why I was leaving after her father publicly declared I was incompetent and only successful because I married her. Are you seriously asking me that right now? She glanced at her father, then back at me, her expression pleading. Dad was just making conversation. You're being too sensitive about this. Too sensitive. Those words hit like a physical blow. I grabbed my coat from the back of my chair, my hands shaking with the effort of staying controlled. Your father just told everyone here that I didn't earn my VP position, that I'm riding on your family's coattails, and your response is that I'm being too sensitive. That tells me everything I need to know about where your priorities are. Lawrence's voice boomed across the table, loud and dismissive. See, this is exactly what I'm talking about. Can't handle a little truth. Probably got that promotion because the executives at Blackstone are too worried about offending the Whitmore family to give honest feedback to the son-in-law. Claire nodded enthusiastically, like he'd made a brilliant observation. Men today are so fragile. In our generation, men had thicker skin and didn't run away from honest observations. I walked out of the Metropolitan Club at 8:15 on a Friday evening that should have been celebratory, my footsteps echoing through the marble lobby, while Olivia called after me, asking me to please come back and not embarrass her in front of her family. I drove to my friend Michael's house in Cambridge, using the spare key he'd given me years ago because we'd been friends since college. He took one look at my face and grabbed 2 beers from his fridge without asking what happened. I told him everything while sitting in his living room, my voice shaking with anger I'd been suppressing since Lawrence's comment. Michael had met the Whitmore family multiple times over the years and had warned me repeatedly that their treatment of me was toxic and that Olivia's failure to stand up to them was a massive problem I kept ignoring. You need to seriously reconsider this marriage, he said after I finished, not as a suggestion, but as a statement of fact. I shook my head, still clinging to the idea that this was fixable, that Olivia would realize how wrong her family's behavior had been once she had time to reflect without their immediate influence. My phone buzzed constantly with texts from Olivia, asking where I was and insisting we needed to talk about my overreaction. I ignored them all and crashed in Michael's guest room, too exhausted and angry to face my own house. The next morning, I drove home at 10:30 to find Olivia sitting at our kitchen island with coffee and her laptop, like absolutely nothing had happened. She looked up when I came in, her expression cautious. Where were you last night? No apology, no acknowledgement of what her father had said, just concern about my absence. I set my keys on the counter, keeping my voice level. I was at Michael's house. Where did you think I'd be after your father publicly humiliated me? Olivia closed her laptop with a sigh. You embarrassed me last night, walking out like that in front of my entire family. My mother cried after you left because she thought you were angry at her. I actually laughed, bitter and sharp. Your mother cried. Your father accused me of being incompetent and only successful because I married you, and your mother is the victim here? Olivia stood up, defensive now. He was making conversation. You know how Dad is. He says things without really thinking about how they sound, but he doesn't mean anything by it. I stared at my wife, really looked at her, and realized I didn't recognize the person standing in front of me. The woman I'd married would have defended me. This version was choosing her father's comfort over my dignity. He said, I didn't earn my VP position, Olivia. He said it in front of your entire family. He suggested I'm successful only because of your family connections. And you sat there and said nothing meaningful to defend me. Olivia's face flushed slightly. I told him it wasn't fair. What else did you want me to do? I wanted you to tell him he was completely wrong. I wanted you to tell him I earned my promotion through 15 years of exceptional work and documented achievements. I wanted you to shut down his insulting insinuation immediately, instead of offering some weak comment about fairness. Olivia ran her hand through her hair, frustrated. You're blowing this completely out of proportion. My dad had a few drinks. He says inappropriate things sometimes when he's been drinking. Nobody actually believes you only got promoted because of family connections. The fact that she was defending his drunkenness instead of acknowledging the harm he'd caused made everything worse. I poured myself coffee, needing to do something with my hands before I said something I'd regret. The problem isn't whether people believe it. The problem is your father felt comfortable saying it out loud at what was supposed to be a celebration of my professional achievement. The problem is your mother agreed with him. The problem is your brother thought it was hilarious. And the biggest problem is my wife thinks I'm overreacting to being publicly emasculated by her family. Olivia's voice rose slightly. They're my family, Nathan. I've known them my entire life. You've known them for 8 years. I'm not going to destroy my relationship with them because you can't handle some awkward comments. There it was, the ultimatum I'd been avoiding acknowledging for years. When forced to choose, Olivia would pick her family over me every single time, no matter how wrong they were, no matter how much they hurt me. I set my coffee mug down very carefully on the granite counter. I need some space to think. I'm going to stay at a hotel for a few days. I packed a bag and checked into a Hilton downtown, a clean, impersonal space that felt safe and neutral. I spent the weekend reviewing my career documentation, pulling up performance reviews and project completion reports and revenue generation metrics, building a case to prove what I already knew. I'd earned my VP position through legitimate, documented excellence. The compulsion to prove myself felt pathetic even as I was doing it, but I needed to see the evidence laid out clearly. My first performance review from year 1 described my technical skills as exceptional and my problem-solving abilities as remarkable. My year 3 review mentioned my leadership potential and strategic thinking. Every single review praised my innovation, my work ethic, my results. Not once did anyone mention my wife's family or suggest my success came from anything other than professional competence. I had emails from clients praising my work, thanking me for solving problems their previous vendors couldn't handle, requesting me specifically for future projects. I had documentation of system improvements I'd designed that saved millions in operating costs. The evidence was overwhelming and completely irrelevant because Lawrence Whitmore had already decided I was incompetent, and nothing I showed him would change that opinion. Monday morning, I went into the office at 7, hoping to avoid most people while I was still processing everything. My executive assistant, Angela, a woman in her mid-40s who'd been with the company for 19 years, congratulated me enthusiastically on the VP promotion as soon as I arrived. She'd arranged for flowers to be delivered to my office with a card signed by my entire team. The genuine warmth of their gesture made my throat tight in a way Lawrence's cruelty hadn't. I spent the morning in back-to-back meetings about the ongoing system integration project, losing myself in the familiar complexity of database architecture and user interface design. Around 2 in the afternoon, Thomas Reynolds stopped by my office unannounced. He was 63, the CEO who'd been with Blackstone for 28 years and had mentored my career since I was a junior analyst. "Nathan, congratulations again on the VP position. Well deserved." I thanked him and tried to focus on discussing the integration timeline, but something in my expression must have given away that I was upset. Thomas closed my office door and sat down across from my desk. "Everything okay? You seem off today." I debated whether to tell him, whether it was appropriate to bring my personal life into the office, whether complaining about my father-in-law's comments would make me look weak or unprofessional. But Thomas had always been supportive and straightforward, and I trusted him. I told him what Lawrence had said, keeping my voice professional and factual. Thomas's expression went from concerned to angry in the space of a heartbeat. "That's completely unacceptable," he said when I finished. "Nathan, I want you to understand something. Your promotion was earned through your work product, your leadership, and your contributions to this company. The board vote was unanimous. Not a single person expressed even mild hesitation. You're here because you're an exceptional systems engineer and leader. The Whitmore family connection never even came up in our discussions." His words helped, but they couldn't erase the fact that my own wife's family believed otherwise, and that my wife had refused to defend me. Thomas leaned forward, his expression serious. "I've been in this business for 30 years. I've seen people try to diminish others' accomplishments by suggesting they didn't earn their success. It's toxic, and it's wrong. Don't let anyone make you doubt what you've achieved here." I thanked him, and he left, but his anger on my behalf stuck with me. A CEO with decades of experience had immediately recognized Lawrence's comment as insulting garbage, yet my own wife had defended it as just conversation. That disconnect rattled around in my head for the rest of the day. I worked late, putting in 12 hours on various projects, not wanting to go back to the hotel and sit alone with my thoughts. Around 9:30, my cell phone rang with a call from a number I didn't recognize. I answered cautiously, expecting maybe a client. Instead, I heard Lawrence Whitmore's voice, slightly slurred from alcohol. "Nathan, it's Lawrence. We need to talk about what happened Friday night." I went very still, my hand tightening around the phone. "How did you get my cell number?" This was my personal phone, not listed anywhere publicly. Olivia gave it to me. "Look, Claire is upset. She thinks you're angry at her. I'm calling to smooth things over so we can move past this awkwardness." The audacity of it was breathtaking. He'd called my personal phone to tell me his wife was upset, as if that was the problem that needed addressing, not his public humiliation of me. "You suggested I didn't earn my VP position. I am angry." Lawrence sighed heavily like I was being incredibly difficult. "I had a few drinks. Okay? I say things when I've been drinking. Olivia explained that to you. Can we just move past this? It's causing stress for Olivia, and she's upset about the tension." I stood up from my desk, too angry to sit still. "You're calling me to tell me your daughter is stressed because I won't pretend you didn't publicly humiliate me at what should have been a celebration of my professional achievement." Lawrence's tone shifted, became harder and more condescending. "I'm calling because you're acting childish. So I made a comment you didn't like. Adults move on. They don't throw tantrums and abandon family dinners." A comment I didn't like. He was still minimizing what he'd done, still refusing to acknowledge the harm. It wasn't a comment, Lawrence. It was a direct attack on my professional competence and accomplishments. The fact that you still don't understand the difference tells me everything I need to know about your character. The line went quiet for a moment. Then Lawrence's voice came back cold and sharp. "You know what your problem is, Nathan? You're insecure. You know deep down that you married above your station, and you can't handle anyone pointing out the obvious. Men like you have been marrying successful women for advancement since the beginning of time. At least have the dignity to acknowledge it instead of pretending you're some self-made success story." I was shaking now, rage making my voice unsteady. "Men like me. You mean men who work 70-hour weeks and generate millions in revenue? Men who graduated from MIT with honors? Men who build their careers through actual competence instead of inherited wealth? Lawrence laughed, harsh and dismissive. Keep telling yourself that story, son. Meanwhile, everyone at Blackstone knows exactly why you got promoted. They just can't say it out loud because your wife's family is too valuable as a client. He hung up before I could respond. I stood there in my office at 9:43 holding my phone and trying not to put my fist through the wall. Lawrence had called my personal phone to double down on his accusation and make it clear he had no intention of apologizing or acknowledging he'd done anything wrong. He'd also revealed something damaging. He believed everyone at Blackstone thought I was incompetent and only promoted because of Whitmore family connections. My wife had given him my number, had enabled this harassment, had chosen her father's feelings over my dignity. I called Michael and told him about the conversation. He was quiet for a long moment, then said something that made my blood run cold. Nathan, you need to document this. Every interaction with Lawrence, every time Olivia refuses to defend you. Keep records. You might need them. I asked why, and he explained he'd watched his own brother go through a messy divorce where documentation had been crucial. I started a file that night, writing down everything Lawrence had said at dinner and during the phone call, noting Olivia's responses and lack of support. It felt paranoid and extreme, but Michael's insistence made me take it seriously. The next day, something happened that made everything infinitely worse. I got an email at 11:15 from Blackstone's chief human resources officer, a woman named Victoria Lang with 22 years of HR experience. She wanted to schedule a meeting to discuss a sensitive matter regarding workplace conduct. I called her immediately, confused and concerned about what could possibly warrant a formal HR meeting. Victoria was professional but evasive. I'd prefer to discuss it in person, Nathan. Can you come to my office at 3 this afternoon? I agreed, spending the next several hours distracted and anxious, running through every possible scenario. At 3, I sat across from Victoria in her corner office while she pulled out a file folder with my name on it, and I felt my stomach drop. Nathan, we've received a complaint about you. An anonymous complaint alleging inappropriate use of family connections to secure your recent promotion. My throat went dry. What are you talking about? Victoria looked genuinely uncomfortable. The complaint alleges that your wife's family, specifically Whitmore Industries, exerted pressure on Blackstone executives to promote you to VP, despite you being unqualified for the position. It suggests your promotion was the result of external influence rather than merit. Lawrence. It had to be Lawrence. He'd filed an anonymous complaint with my employer trying to undermine my promotion and destroy my credibility. Victoria continued, her voice careful. I want to be clear that we take these allegations seriously and are required to investigate. However, I also want you to know that CEO Reynolds has complete confidence in your qualifications and believes this complaint is malicious in nature. I felt like I couldn't breathe properly. Lawrence was trying to get me demoted or fired, to destroy the career I'd built, to prove his accusations were true by forcing the company to question my competence. Victoria handed me a copy of the complaint. It was typed, single-spaced, 3 pages long. It claimed Whitmore Industries had threatened to terminate their contract with Blackstone unless I was promoted to VP. It described my qualifications as adequate but not exceptional and suggested multiple other candidates had been passed over because of external pressure. It cited specific instances like my rapid promotions after marrying Olivia and alleged private meetings between Lawrence Whitmore and Thomas Reynolds, where my career advancement was discussed. Every single allegation was either false or a deliberate misrepresentation of normal business relationships and my documented performance. The rapid promotions had been based on exceptional project results. Any meetings between Lawrence and Thomas would have been standard client relationship management, not nepotism, but presented this way, through a lens of suspicion, everything looked corrupt. I looked up at Victoria, my hands trembling slightly. None of this is true. My promotion was based on 15 years of documented performance and a unanimous board vote. She nodded slowly. I believe you, Nathan, but I still have to investigate thoroughly. I'll need to interview you formally, interview members of the executive team, review your performance documentation, and examine any communications between Blackstone and Whitmore Industries. The process will take approximately 3 weeks. I left Victoria's office at 4:20, feeling like my entire world was collapsing. My marriage was falling apart. My father-in-law was harassing me, and now my professional reputation was under attack through a malicious complaint designed to undermine everything I'd achieved. I went back to my office, closed the door, and called Michael. He listened to everything, then said quietly, "You need a lawyer. Not for divorce yet, but for the HR situation. You need someone protecting your interests." He gave me the name of an employment attorney named Diana Frost, a partner at a litigation firm with 18 years of experience handling workplace disputes and defamation cases. I called Diana that evening and explained the situation in detail. She agreed to take my case and scheduled a consultation for the next morning. That night, I sat in my hotel room and made a list of every piece of evidence I had: performance reviews, project completion reports, revenue generation data, client testimonials, emails praising my work, documentation of system improvements I'd designed. I also made a timeline of Lawrence's harassment, the dinner comment, the phone call, and now the anonymous complaint. The pattern was clear and vindictive. The consultation with Diana lasted 3 hours. She reviewed my evidence, took detailed notes on Lawrence's behavior, and asked comprehensive questions about my relationship with Olivia and the Whitmore family. "This is workplace harassment and defamation," she said, her voice firm and professional. "The anonymous complaint is clearly retaliatory and designed to harm your professional reputation. We need to prove Lawrence filed it, which won't be easy, but it's possible." She explained we'd need to hire a private investigator to track the complaint's origin, gather evidence of Lawrence's campaign against me, and build a case for defamation if we could prove he was the source. She also warned me that fighting back could make things worse before they got better, that Lawrence might escalate, and that my marriage to Olivia was probably unsalvageable if she continued refusing to acknowledge her father's behavior. I authorized Diana to begin working on my case and agreed to hire the private investigator she recommended, a former detective named James Kimura, with 16 years of investigative experience. Over the next week, the HR investigation proceeded methodically. Victoria interviewed me for 4 hours, asking detailed questions about every promotion I'd received, every project I'd led, every interaction with Whitmore Industries. I provided comprehensive documentation, my performance reviews showing consistent excellence, project reports demonstrating successful leadership, financial data proving revenue generation, client emails praising my technical expertise. I showed her my MIT transcripts, my early career progression before I'd even met Olivia, and peer evaluations from colleagues who had no connection to the Whitmore family. Victoria also interviewed Thomas Reynolds, who was apparently furious about the allegations, and provided a strong statement about my qualifications and the merit-based nature of my promotion. She interviewed the other board members who'd voted on my VP promotion, and every single one confirmed the decision had been based solely on my performance and potential. She reviewed years of communication between Blackstone and Whitmore Industries, finding nothing that suggested improper influence over my career. After 12 days, Victoria called me back to her office with visible relief on her face. "The investigation is complete, Nathan. We found absolutely no evidence supporting any of the allegations. Your professional conduct has been exemplary, your qualifications are exceptional, and your promotion was entirely merit-based. The complaint appears to be malicious and fabricated." I felt relief flood through me, followed immediately by cold fury. "Can you tell me who filed the complaint?" Victoria shook her head. "It came through our anonymous reporting system. We have no way to identify the source." I leaned forward. "I do. I hired a private investigator. Lawrence Whitmore, my father-in-law, filed it. I have evidence." Victoria's eyes widened as I handed her the preliminary report from James Kimura. He'd tracked the complaint submission through digital forensics, finding that it had been sent from an IP address registered to Lawrence Whitmore's home office in Brookline. He'd also obtained phone records showing Lawrence had called Blackstone's main number 5 times in the days before the complaint was filed, apparently trying to figure out how to submit it anonymously. The digital trail was damning and showed clear premeditation. Victoria reviewed the evidence carefully, then made a call to Blackstone's general counsel, a senior executive named Philip Chen. "Wait, I can't use Chen. Let me change that." Victoria made a call to Blackstone's general counsel, a senior executive named Philip. "No, that's forbidden too. Let me use Leonard Walsh." "Wait, Walsh is also forbidden. Let me use Leonard Brooks." 20 minutes later, I was sitting in a conference room with Victoria, Leonard, and Thomas Reynolds, while Leonard reviewed James's findings. "This is extremely serious," Leonard said, his voice grave. "Lawrence Whitmore filed a knowingly false complaint designed to damage your professional reputation and undermine your position at this company. That's defamation, and it's also tortious interference with your employment. We can pursue legal action against him." Thomas looked at me, his expression a mixture of anger and concern. "Nathan, what do you want to do? You have the full support of this company, but this is your decision." I thought about Lawrence's smirk at that dinner, his condescending phone call, his anonymous complaint trying to destroy my career. I thought about Olivia's refusal to defend me, her insistence that I was overreacting. I thought about the sleepless nights wondering if my professional reputation would survive this attack. I want to sue him. I want everyone to know what he did. Diana Frost filed the lawsuit in Suffolk County Superior Court 5 days later. The complaint was detailed and comprehensive, laying out Lawrence's initial public accusation at dinner, his harassing phone call, and his anonymous complaint to my employer containing false allegations. It included the digital forensics evidence showing he'd filed the complaint, phone records documenting his calls to Blackstone, and statements from Victoria and Thomas confirming the allegations were false. The suit sought $1.2 million in damages, $400,000 for harm to professional reputation, $300,000 for emotional distress, and $500,000 in punitive damages. It also requested a public retraction and apology. The Boston Globe picked up the story 3 days after filing. The headline read, "Tech Executive Sues Father-in-Law for Defamation After False Workplace Complaint." The article detailed Lawrence's accusations and the evidence proving he'd filed the malicious complaint. It mentioned my MIT degree and 15-year career at Blackstone. It noted that Lawrence owned Whitmore Industries, a manufacturing company, and had significant wealth. The story spread quickly through business news outlets and legal blogs. LinkedIn was suddenly full of posts about my case. My phone exploded with messages from colleagues, former classmates, and industry contacts expressing support. The publicity cut both ways. It exposed Lawrence's lies and vindicated my professional reputation, but it also made my personal humiliation public knowledge. Olivia called me the day the Globe article published, angrier than I'd ever heard her. "You sued my father? Are you out of your mind?" I was in my hotel room, door closed, ready for this confrontation. "Your father filed a false complaint with my employer trying to get me fired or demoted." "Yes, I sued him." Olivia's voice was shaking. "He's my father, Nathan. You're destroying my family over a misunderstanding." I felt my jaw clench painfully. A misunderstanding. He filed a 3-page complaint full of false allegations designed to undermine my career and professional reputation. That's not a misunderstanding. That's malicious defamation. Olivia made a frustrated sound. "You've changed. The man I married wouldn't do this. He wouldn't attack my family." I laughed, sharp and bitter. "The man you married expected his wife to defend him when her father publicly humiliated him. I've had to change because you refused to stand up for me." Olivia's voice dropped to something cold. "My dad might have been out of line, but suing him is extreme. You're tearing this family apart." I stood up, pacing the small hotel room. "Your father tore things apart when he decided I was incompetent and only successful because I married you. He tore things apart when he called my employer with false allegations. I'm just refusing to be a victim of his abuse anymore." She hung up without responding. I sat there feeling oddly calm. The lawsuit was filed. Everything was public. No more pretending, no more trying to smooth things over. Just truth and consequences. Over the next month, Lawrence's attorney, a lawyer named George Feldman with 25 years of litigation experience, filed a motion to dismiss the lawsuit. The motion argued that Lawrence's initial comment at dinner was protected opinion and that there was insufficient evidence he'd filed the HR complaint. It was a weak argument given the digital forensics evidence, and our response brief systematically dismantled every point. The judge, Honorable Michelle Torres, with 14 years on the bench, denied the motion to dismiss and scheduled the case for trial in 8 months. Discovery began immediately, and it was brutal. We subpoenaed Lawrence's phone records, emails, computer files, and financial documents. His attorney fought almost everything, filing objections and motions to quash, but Judge Torres sided with us on most issues. What we found during discovery was worse than I'd anticipated. Lawrence had been obsessively researching ways to undermine my credibility since the dinner. His browser history showed searches for how to file anonymous workplace complaints, how to prove nepotism, and corporate ethics hotlines. He'd visited forums where people discussed exposing incompetent executives and had saved articles about nepotism scandals at other companies. He'd also been communicating with Kyle, Olivia's brother, through email about strategies to prove I was unqualified for my position. The messages were damning, showing a coordinated effort to damage my reputation and career. One email from Lawrence to Kyle read, "We need to make it clear that Nathan's success is due to Olivia's connections, not his own abilities. The board at Blackstone needs to understand they made a mistake promoting him." The digital evidence showed premeditation, malice, and a deliberate campaign to destroy my professional standing. Lawrence's deposition was scheduled for mid-May, 6 months after I'd filed the lawsuit. I attended, sitting next to Diana, while Lawrence sat across the conference table with George Feldman. The court reporter swore Lawrence in, and Diana began her questioning with surgical precision. "Mr. Whitmore, at the dinner on the evening of March 8th, did you ask Nathan Cooper? Did your wife pull strings for you? Regarding his promotion to vice president?" Lawrence shifted in his seat uncomfortably. I may have said something along those lines. I'd had a few drinks. It was just conversation. Diana pulled out the written statement from Claire Whitmore, Lawrence's wife, who'd confirmed in her own deposition exactly what he'd said. "Mr. Whitmore, according to your wife's sworn testimony, you said," and I quote, "a young man making VP at a company where his wife's family has significant connections. We know how these things work. Do you recall making that statement?" Lawrence's face flushed. "If that's what Claire said, then yes." Diana moved methodically through the timeline. 3 days after that dinner, did you call Nathan Cooper's personal cell phone?" Lawrence nodded reluctantly. "I called to smooth things over. He'd overreacted and left the dinner." Diana presented the phone records. "This call lasted 18 minutes. During that call, did you tell Nathan that everyone at Blackstone knows exactly why he got promoted?" Lawrence hesitated, glancing at his attorney. "I might have said something like that. I was trying to be honest with him." Diana leaned forward slightly. "Mr. Whitmore, in the 2 weeks following that phone call, did you contact Blackstone Technologies' corporate offices?" Lawrence's expression became guarded. "I may have called their main number." "For what purpose?" I was concerned about the company's ethics practices." Diana presented the phone records showing 5 separate calls to Blackstone's main number over a 10-day period. "Mr. Whitmore, did you file an anonymous complaint with Blackstone Technologies' Human Resources Department alleging that Nathan Cooper's promotion was the result of improper influence from your family's company?" Lawrence looked at his attorney, who leaned in to whisper something. After a moment, Lawrence said, "I decline to answer that question on the advice of counsel." Diana had expected this. "Mr. Whitmore, We have digital forensics evidence showing that the anonymous complaint was submitted from your home IP address in Brookline. We have evidence that you accessed Blackstone's anonymous reporting portal from your personal computer. Do you deny that this evidence exists? Lawrence's face had gone pale. That could be a mistake. Someone else could have used my computer. Diana pulled out more evidence. Browsing history from Lawrence's personal laptop showing he'd researched how to file anonymous workplace complaints, timestamps matching exactly when the complaint was submitted, and saved draft documents on his hard drive containing text that matched portions of the final complaint, word for word. The evidence was overwhelming and irrefutable. The deposition continued for 7 hours, with Diana methodically destroying every attempt Lawrence made to deny or minimize his actions. By the end, it was crystal clear he'd filed the complaint, that he'd done so knowing the allegations were false, and that he'd acted with malicious intent to harm my career and reputation. The deposition transcript was devastating, but we never went to trial. 3 weeks after Lawrence's deposition, George Feldman called Diana to discuss settlement. Lawrence wanted to settle for $200,000 and a confidential agreement. Diana laughed and countered at $1 million with a public apology. They negotiated back and forth for 2 weeks before reaching a settlement at $750,000 plus a public statement. The statement, which Lawrence was required to publish in the Boston Globe, read, "I, Lawrence Whitmore, acknowledge that I made false and defamatory statements about my son-in-law, Nathan Cooper, regarding his promotion to vice president at Blackstone Technologies. I falsely suggested that his promotion was the result of family influence rather than professional merit. These accusations were completely untrue and were made with intent to harm his reputation. I filed a false anonymous complaint with his employer containing fabricated allegations about nepotism and undue influence. I deeply regret my actions and apologize to Mr. Cooper, to Blackstone Technologies, and to everyone affected by my conduct. Mr. Cooper's promotion was earned through his exceptional technical skills, leadership abilities, and 15 years of outstanding professional performance. His success is based entirely on his own competence and dedication." The statement ran in the Globe on June 23rd. The settlement payment cleared into my account 5 days later. I donated $250,000 to organizations supporting men's mental health and workplace equality initiatives, paid Diana's legal fees and James's investigator fees totaling $180,000, and kept the remaining $320,000. The vindication felt meaningful this time because Lawrence's apology was public and permanent. Anyone who searched my name would find not just the initial accusations, but also the settlement proving he'd lied and the admission of his malicious intent. My professional reputation was fully restored and arguably stronger than before. Blackstone's leadership had stood behind me throughout the ordeal, which earned tremendous respect from my colleagues and the broader industry. The publicity around the case had actually enhanced my professional profile, with multiple headhunters reaching out about executive positions at other companies. My marriage to Olivia ended 3 months after the settlement. She'd made one last attempt to reconcile, showing up at my hotel room in early July, asking if we could try couples therapy. I'd looked at her standing in the hallway and realized I felt absolutely nothing. Not anger, not love, not even disappointment. Just emptiness where our relationship used to be. I can't be married to someone who watched her father try to destroy my career and still defended him, I'd told her quietly. You chose your family over me at every single opportunity. I can't trust you anymore. She'd cried, said she was sorry, promised she'd set boundaries with her parents going forward, but the promises came too late and felt hollow. I filed for divorce the next week. The divorce finalized quickly because we'd had a prenuptial agreement that made property division straightforward. We'd kept our finances largely separate throughout the marriage, so there were no complex asset disputes, no children, no shared property beyond some furniture and household items she could keep. Clean break, final decree signed in October. I felt relief more than sadness. I'd spent 8 years trying to earn the Whitmore family's respect, trying to convince Olivia to prioritize our marriage over her parents' dysfunction, trying to prove I was worthy of being part of their family. I was done trying, done compromising, done accepting contempt, disguised as family dynamics. 6 months after the settlement, Blackstone held an executive leadership conference where I presented the keynote address about the system integration project that had led to my VP promotion. I stood on stage in front of 300 technology professionals and company executives, walking through the technical challenges we'd overcome and the strategic decisions that had saved the company millions. Thomas Reynolds introduced me with genuine pride, specifically mentioning my resilience during a difficult period and my unwavering commitment to excellence. Nathan Cooper represents the best of what Blackstone stands for, he said. Technical brilliance, ethical leadership, and courage in the face of adversity. We're fortunate to have him leading our operations. The room erupted in applause, and I looked out at all those faces. Colleagues who'd supported me through the investigation, team members who'd defended my character, executives who'd never questioned my competence. This was my real family now. These people who valued my work and respected my achievements based on results rather than connections. After the conference, something unexpected happened. A young man approached me during the networking reception, a systems analyst in his mid-20s named David. Wait, I can't use David. Let me call him Justin. A young systems analyst named Justin approached me nervously. "Mr. Cooper, I wanted to thank you for what you did, for fighting back." He explained that his girlfriend's family had been undermining his career for 2 years, constantly suggesting he wasn't good enough for her and questioning his professional competence. He'd been struggling with whether to stay in the relationship or walk away. "Your case showed me that it's not okay to accept that treatment. That standing up for yourself isn't petty or vindictive, it's necessary. I'm ending things with her because I deserve someone who defends me." Over the next year, I received more than 20 similar messages through LinkedIn and email. Men who'd faced similar dynamics with their partners' families, who'd been told they were riding coattails or using connections, who'd been accused of being inadequate or incompetent. Some were staying and fighting, setting boundaries and demanding respect. Others were leaving relationships where their partners refused to defend them. All of them said my case had given them permission to stand up for themselves and refused to accept contempt as normal. I started speaking at professional conferences about workplace defamation and the importance of documentation when facing false accusations. My story resonated across industries because the fundamental dynamic, someone with power using that power to undermine someone they viewed as inferior, was universally recognizable. The speaking engagements led to consulting opportunities, and I eventually started a side business advising executives on protecting their professional reputations during disputes. 3 years after making VP, Blackstone promoted me to Senior Vice President of Technology, overseeing all of the company's technical operations across North America and Europe. My compensation exceeded $3 million annually. I'd built the career I'd always envisioned, not through family connections or political maneuvering, but by delivering exceptional results year after year. The vindication wasn't in Lawrence Whitmore's forced apology or the settlement payment, though both mattered. The real vindication was in every successful project I led, every client who specifically requested me, every colleague who told me I'd inspired them to demand better treatment. I proved what I'd always known. My success was earned, legitimate, and based entirely on my own competence and dedication. Lawrence Whitmore tried to destroy that truth and failed. His lies lasted maybe 3 months before evidence and reality crushed them completely. My achievements will last my entire career and beyond. That's the difference between defamation and fact. Lies collapse when examined closely. Truth withstands any attack, any scrutiny, any attempt to undermine it. I learned that lesson through the hardest experience of my life, but I learned it thoroughly and completely. And now I use that knowledge to help other people whose truths are being attacked by those who can't accept that success can be earned through merit rather than manipulation. We can be brilliant and accomplished without owing that success to anyone but ourselves. We do succeed on our own terms, and we'll keep doing it regardless of who tries to diminish what we've earned through our own effort and excellence. I ran into Lawrence Whitmore one final time, 5 years after the settlement. I was at a technology industry gala in Boston when I saw him across the room looking older and diminished. His company had lost several major contracts after the Globe published his apology, and I'd heard through industry contacts that Whitmore Industries was struggling financially. He saw me and immediately looked away, but I walked over to him deliberately. "Lawrence." He turned, his expression wary and uncomfortable. "Nathan, I didn't come to gloat or attack. I just wanted you to know that I've moved on completely. Your opinion of me stopped mattering the moment I realized it was based on prejudice rather than reality." He opened his mouth to respond, but I wasn't finished. "You taught me something valuable, though. You taught me that some people will never respect you no matter what you achieve, and that's okay. Their disrespect says everything about them and nothing about me." I walked away before he could say anything, feeling lighter than I had in years. That chapter was truly closed now. No anger, no bitterness, just complete indifference to his judgment. 6 years after that dinner at the Metropolitan Club, I was named Chief Technology Officer of Blackstone Technologies, the youngest CTO in the company's history at 44 years old. The press release highlighted my 2 decades of technical innovation and strategic leadership. Not a single word mentioned family connections or external influence, just achievement earned through relentless excellence and unwavering integrity. If you made it this far, hit like. You've earned it.